religion. The ones who set themselves on fire because we're in the end times. They throw tomato sauce at art to protect Gaia from capitalism. I mean, their message is not getting across to me very well. But they believe that the future will be ubiquitous lockdown to save the planet. That's pretty much it. Locking you down because you are a carbon super spreader. That's why, as of late, I've been suggesting that we, dispense with this idea that we're super spreaders of anything, like memes, carbon. To me, this is all just them trying to suggest that you're breathing too much. World War Zero, they want to cut man's carbon footprint in half by 2030. Like, what do you think that actually means? QA says decoy missile thing seems a bit fake. Just fire more actual missiles. Hey, I'm going off their reports. It was Russia's mock dummy missile. Russia fired a dummy nuke in sinister warning. That was November 18th. It was a cruise missile, but it was a dummy. And it was shot down anyway. Imagine that. Fake. If you're looking at the screen, here's a clip of JFK, and you can clearly see that it's a dummy. And you can actually see Jackie push the dummy's arm down. And there's a tweet here by JMM underscore 2020. I'll share it. I retweeted it. And what he's pointing out here is that what you see in the car, the thing that gets shot, or appears to be, it has non-human proportions. And if you look at the ears in relation to the eye, it's not even a good-looking dummy. I'll play a clip. It's a clip from the Zapruder film, and you can kind of see it's pretty evident here. This thing is a dummy. As I said, Zapruder didn't shoot this. I think this is Kubrick. Kubrick shot Kennedy. Oh yeah, that is so absolutely a dummy. Anyway, JFK didn't die that day. The thing was a big hoax. And I think Apollo 11 and 9/11, both directed by Kubrick, I think they had the same purpose. And I believe the purpose is to drag the world with these world captivating events onto the world stage, to bring us that much closer into the simulation. New shop sale from AA. Appreciate the support. As always, this is what keeps the channel going. This is what keeps the text alerts going out. I mean, it's the reason why we have 65 people in the video chat here, even though we don't have the number of subs that would pull in that kind of crowd. And then we have another 25 on the audio stream and another 10 or 15 at Odyssey. Again, I appreciate everyone here who puts gas in the tank. And this tank is going to go on. The plan is 30 years. I mean, it's been a couple of years, but I'll just keep pushing it forward. The idea here is it doesn't have to stop. We are building a growing body of perceivers who analyze the news hypercritically and share intel with one another. And it's worth keeping it going just for its own sake, for record keeping, for posterity. There has to be a record of what really happened. But moreover, I think we waste a lot of time debating with people whose only arguments against our points are they don't believe it's possible that we could be lied to on this scale, or they don't believe they could be tricked. Do you remember what I believe it was Mark Twain said about, oh yes, Christmas Eve, Christmas caroling lyrics, 12/24/2022. I don't have any special plans tonight. I know you can track Santa using the ISS tracking device, the app. And if you didn't know, the same amount of evidence for the existence of Santa is the only evidence we have for the existence of the ISS. It's all hearsay and people who want to believe. I think the ISS, the space station, is another UFO myth. It has the same structure. It's just a light in the sky, and it's easy to get people to go off of rumor, especially when that rumor gives you clout. If you swagger into a UFO conference when it was a big deal and you claimed that you were abducted, you would be a rock star. You met with the gods. You were chosen. Maybe you're a hybrid. There was a huge incentive to lie to fit in. Lying to make friends is a huge thing. Phil LeBlanc says, I'm dreaming of a white Saturnalia. Oh, here's a nice clip. This is from Sim Warlord. I highly recommend this channel. It's at ZeroSum24. Here you have a number of climate, what do we call them? Eco-terrorists, eco-fascists, Greta's gone wild. They're laying on an F1 track. I mean, they could be, not only could they be killed, the drivers could be killed, spectators could be killed, which is good for Gaia. It'll reduce a number of carbon footprints down to zero. It'll help them reach their goal. Tell me this isn't just a suicide cult. Is the political left just a suicide cult? Like Heaven's Gate writ large. Bill Gates is their Marshall Applewhite. And then this type of, it's like self-immolation, self-sacrifice, pathological altruism. If you're just listening, those are race cars going by at a couple hundred miles per hour. And the pit crew comes out to save the climate change activists who are trying to save Gaia from cars. It's beautiful how this works. I mean, really. I mean, it's diabolical. It's genius in a way. Is climate change caused by God, carbon emissions, or chemtrails? You know, this idea of climate change activists sounds like it's extreme and it's fringe, but that's actually backed by science. It's not considered to be a conspiracy theory. But then if you say, I think something's going on with the weather, but I suspect it's geoengineering and maybe it's chemtrails, then you're a conspiracy theorist. I mean, maybe they both have a point, but generally speaking, they both wouldn't. When it comes to believers versus believers, they're usually both being duped. Joined by Lloyd Miller, who was banned from Discord for life. You know, we're like the band of band. We're all exiles from the world stage. We've all been kicked out, booted, censored. And now we're kind of ganging up on that premise. It's like, well, they don't want us. Fine. They don't want us breathing their air. There's plenty of air outside of their system. And this is kind of a foreshadowing of the future, I believe, where the elite and the properly indoctrinated and vaccinated will live in their domed, enclosed cities, and the rest, the heathens, the purebloods, will be left out in the wild. I think that's what's next. They don't want us breathing their air. Just like Demolition Man. That is the future. Oswaldo says, wouldn't they be helping Gaia by offing themselves? Yeah, I'm like, line up and just go jump into a volcano. Or commit small property crimes and get yourself arrested. I mean, that's kind of what they've been doing. That's pretty good. That helps Gaia. You want to lower your carbon footprint. Stop flying around. Stop going on your private jets to these climate summits and just get locked down. If you can't lock yourself down in your own basement, go to jail perhaps. And I say that it's fine to preemptively arrest climate change activists. Just arrest them. And the reason why is that this is the future that they're going to impose. Let them lead by example. They want you jailed. They want ubiquitous home incarceration. Like, well, you first. Java 33 says an Army cargo plane uses 800 gallons of gas per hour. Climate change people should focus on that. Good point. They're focused on these small private jets, but only the ones flown by Republicans or people on the other side of the aisle, because they sure don't care about all the private jets flying over to these climate change conventions, like witches conventions. I mean, these are just a bunch of control freaks using a false pretext. We all know environmentalism is just communism. It's a stalking horse for communism. They've rebranded class warfare, rich oppressing the poor need to rise up, or we need to defend the poor, but they've replaced it with environment. And who oppresses the environment? It's not the poor, who are the more numerous ones. No, they blame the minority, the rich. It's the same scheme, same scam. Lean Dion says America was the savage lands in the Brave New World series. I'll have to watch that. When the lockdown started, Ivanka Trump came out and she said something along the lines of, "We're all going to get used to this brave new world together." And the way she said it kind of bothered me at the time because she was looking down into the camera and she was in a bedroom, like a child's bedroom. And it almost looked like she was talking to a, a baby. Like, in other words, we were a baby and she's like big mother, like big brother. But you have this face looking down telling you to enjoy this brave
This
new.
weird toolbox replacing gadget is
In fact, I
quickly
have it
becoming.
here. I actually have the clip. Ivanka Trump's Brave New World clip from March of 2020.
So it's Monday morning here in DC as we wake up to this brave new world.
Brave New World. Right. Accurate, though, for sure. Diana South says in the 70s the slogan was "Give a hoot, don't pollute." Well, the reason why the space program and environmentalism are so intertwined is it kind of sets the precedent. That like if we're going to go on Mars, we can't live with all the problems that plague us here on Earth and we can leave them behind. And we can get the public to accept that this is the perfect utopia. This is the ideal. This type of Mars base, this lunar base. Then they can ask, well, why can't we do that here on Earth? On Earth as it is in Mars, or on Mars, or in our space heaven. That's kind of what they're doing. It's a utopian scheme, just like communism, workers' paradise, space communism. But the brilliant thing is this: the right, who are pretty well apprised of what environmentalism is, they somehow think that space travel and the space program is separate from that. But no, the space program is a huge part of it. When Stuart Brand came out with his whole Earth catalog, he was agitating for NASA to give us an image of the globe that shows how fragile it is, so we can catalyze a movement to save it. That's what started it. They showed us the face of the globe in the context of environmentalism and how threatened it was or is, because, of course, you're all breathing too much, which is what it comes down to. Fauci's warning to America: we're living in a progressively anti-science era, and that's a very dangerous thing. He's 100% right. He's 100% right. Although, what he's suggesting is that the people who don't agree with the dominant scientism of the day are the anti-science type. But no, I'm saying it's quite the opposite. Just like the media isn't there to report the truth, but it's more to frame your world view. It's not real media, and a lot of the stuff that passes for science has the same kind of corruption, or at least it's narrow in its focus by design, leading people to certain conclusions to where they think, well, I'm going to set myself on fire at a tennis match because the Trump voters drive big trucks. QA says he recycles. It's the right thing to do. According to who? And moreover, is recycling even sustainable? Is it anything more than virtue signaling? Has it done anything to save the planet at all? How far do you drive to the recycling center? I mean, when you get into it, recycling is not, I mean, the way that they market it, it's not all that sustainable. I mean, obviously it's smart to conserve and to be economical and to streamline things and to not generate gratuitous waste. It's kind of a straw man anyway. I mean, every single cartoon, like Captain Planet, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, every one of these cartoons, they always have the same enemy, the same bad guy. It's the CEO who's dumping toxic waste into the rivers. It's always the same thing. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were what, created by toxic waste. Captain Planet. I mean, I didn't even watch this garbage, but I've seen it. We've been inundated with it. Nobody ever talks about how bad for the environment socialism or communism are. Truth Hurts 21 says even normie YouTube channels admit most recycling is sent to China landfills. Sure. And you believe the science, you want to save the planet. Well, explain how there's 57 million tons of PPE in the ocean. You've been crying about the ocean levels rising for 35 years now. They didn't rise until 2021, and that's just because of all the PPE that was dumped in there. It wasn't properly treated as pathological waste. You've got islands of COVID festering in the oceans. You got dolphins with masks, stuck on their beaks. I mean, really, it's killing animals. But I'm thinking that the ocean levels probably went up about a millimeter just from all the PPE. All right, let us continue. Look, if you don't recycle and you feel bad about it, you can confess. If you're a carbon super spreader, you can go to the Climate Confessional. Just go to NBCnews.com, one of the larger denominations of the Church of State, and you can write your confession and you can view the confessions of others. Although I wouldn't feel safe doing it, I feel like anyone here who reports themselves for a climate violation at some point will end up at the end of a firing squad when the CCP gets this information and tracks you down. Like this guy here, I use too many paper towels even though I have cleaning rags. I leave the television on all night. It helps me sleep better. So he's confessing under energy. Let's see here. Oh, this guy here is being rebellious. This is someone who'll probably see the firing squads. I'm 77. I love to be comfortable. Stop trying to control me. Okay, down the street there's a convenience store, and one day an environmentalist wacko went in there and stole all the straws. This is where you can get, it's like 110 degrees out here. It's hot. You can get these 64-ounce drinks, and then you can carry it home and, divide it, whatever. But you get these big drinks, you require straws. No, they took all the straws because straws are causing global warming or something. And the next thing you know, these same individuals are throwing masks in the street. T-Dog135 says Toxic Avenger fell into the waste. It's called cli-fi, climate fiction. If you have a movie idea about some intriguing new monster or some villain, I would say just cross out the villain and replace it with bad weather, or maybe a polluter who causes some kind of aberrant weather, because climate fiction is the only thing that gets published. It's in all the movies. It's the case is you can't even get on Netflix and watch a science fiction where it doesn't start with, in the very first scene, after the apocalypse caused by climate change, after the nukes. Every single movie presupposes that the world ends after this, I don't know, I guess after we finish doing what we're doing here to ruin everything. Then I've seen these plastic straws, these paper straws that you can buy because plastic straws are bad. But then you buy them from Amazon and it arrives in a plastic bag and each one is individually wrapped in plastic. We thought COVIDiots were bad. The environmentalists are far worse. If they really cared about the environment, they wouldn't drive. They would already be locked down voluntarily. They wouldn't be using smartphones. And the list goes on. They should be leading the most ascetic lifestyles. We should see people in sandals and just very, minimalist on the clothing because, of course, all this fashion, all these clothes, it's just bad for the environment. We should see people walking around with basically togas, and we should just say, oh, there's an environmentalist. They don't have phones. They don't like print books. They're just out there. They ought to be some of the most detached and unworldly people out there. But then you look at Man Bear Pig. Or you look at the trash piled up on the floor of Greta Thunberg's Tesla, and you're like, okay, they don't believe any of what they're saying. All right, to continue, we have plenty of QAnon news. I had that clip I played you. Heartbreaking visit to delusional QAnon family. I think it's the last gasp. I really do. And if you submit a nominee, one of our categories is the worst Q dropper or whoever dropped the most Q crumbs. Again, we're taking up nominations for the 2022 Best of Worst Awards. Again, Best of Worst Awards, submit your nominations, and I believe I'll have a vote over the next 5 days or so, and then on New Year's Eve, we'll announce the winners and we'll email out the trophies. All right, let's see here. AAAA says, I hate paper straws. Green commie Nazis put them into law here. Right? Well, the whole premise is, of course, to save the planet. And that hasn't been established as a cause that's actually valid or needed. Like, does the planet need to be saved? And what about the whales? Like, can they not focus on saving one thing before moving on to the next thing? It used to be save the whales, now nobody cares. Now it's moving on to space environmentalism, where they're overly concerned with space junk. And the thing is, and this is predictable, they're pointing their fingers at Musk, of all things. Now consider this. I said from the beginning that NASA is here as not just taking you to space, it's actually about controlling your inner space. It's mind space war. The Psi War is about controlling your mind space. And I've been saying this from the beginning. And then you have Musk spreading what? Mind junk on Twitter. He opened the floodgates for mind junk. That's why all the lefties left. The reason they're going to have an internet lockdown is because of all the mind junk. It's like a pandemic of it. While up above, he's caused a space junk issue. Now you have articles like this. Heaven, and this is from Washington.edu, heaven needs environmental protection just like Earth. Heaven? Nature.com, a case for space environmentalism because of dead and leftover satellites, derelict satellites, orbital debris, space environmentalism. Anyway, it goes on. Celestial Citizen, Space Environmentalism, and Apple Products. An analysis of the space junk problem. The final frontier of environmental disasters. Could the next environmental crisis be in space? I have eco-anxiety over this. The sky is falling. This is, again, consistent. I'm telling you, it's all about this as above, so below. They create something in your mind in the abstract, and then they convince you it's a good idea to impose it here. And yeah, we got to clean up all the space junk, obviously. Got to clean up all the mind junk and the mind viruses. I just don't think it's a coincidence that he's the biggest mind junk and space junk polluter. Another interesting parallel here. On the ISS, summer of 2020, they were all getting vaccinated. The mission was called Celestial Immunity. During this mission, a piece of space junk hit the elbow, well, above the elbow, of the arm of the space station. Space station has an arm. Above the elbow, it got a hole in it. It got vaxxed during celestial immunity. Again, these are intentional mergings of parallel storylines, and they all connect, and they're all leading us to a specific thing. Lean Dion says 10 climate commandments on Mount Sinai recently. Yeah. Climate commandments, climate sins, eco sins. The Pope himself, I've referred to him before as the Green Pope. The Pope has talked about eco sins and the sin of individualism. Pope Francis adding ecological sins to the church. In other words, you can go confess at a church instead of NBC News. Go tell your priest that you use too many paper towels. But then the money doesn't go to help the environment. You're better off confessing to NBC and paying your carbon taxes. The other day we went over the parallels between the biblical flood of Noah and the modern flood myth. Look, Every single aspect of the modern paradigm has been templated on ancient superstition. I would even call this weaponized superstition. White vinegar removes chemtrails. Go ahead and play this clip. We've already gone over this before, but this is from an individual who believes that you can use white vinegar to remove chemtrails. I'll just play a clip in case any of you want to give this a shot. And I believe this started back when Ron Paul was popular, and it was Ron Paul supporters who were mostly about this. What it says is, remove the poison sky with white vinegar. Pour some outside, it works. And you have an individual with some kind of fan and then a bucket of white vinegar on top, and it blows up at the sky, and supposedly it, yeah, removes chemtrails. Now, this is an example, I think, of a mistaking of or conflating causation and correlation. Maybe there is a correlation. You pour your vinegar and that condensation trail dissipates. But did you cause it? I could point to the sun and I could say, I'm going to pull that thing down, I'm going to point at it, and I'm going to point down at the horizon, and it's going to fall down that way. Did I cause the sun to set? No. I think they're tricking themselves. I think it's a very subtle trick. And I think it's been going on a long time, and I think it's kind of a joke by intelligence agencies to get people to auto-discredit. It's the reason why this was so much attached to Ron Paul supporters with spray bottles squirting the sky. Spray and pray, says Lean Dion. Well, there actually are people, I've seen many of them, who go out on TikTok or YouTube and they make videos of themselves praying away chemtrails. The thing is, they go away. Again, simply explained, they are assuming that they're causing it because it's confusing or conflating causation and correlation. It's just an error in cognition. It's a logical fallacy. Did Donald Trump commit copyright fraud? Did anybody here buy any of Donald Trump's NFTs? Apparently he didn't right-click in Google Lens search. He would have found out that these were all ripped out of a Walmart catalog, and his face was just crop and dropped onto them. This is so unreal. It's like this is like the lowest effort Psywar ever. Worst apocalypse ever. Got a comment from Aunt Necklace. Says, I spent 2 hours listening to it in a bar yesterday. Turned a couple of people onto your work. Plan to buy your new book. Happy Christmas, dude. Appreciate it very much. Playing Infinite Plane radio in a bar. Phil LeBlanc says, a cigarette a day keeps the bioweapons away. Well, I think I was kind of predisposed not to think too much about chemtrails as like a clear and present danger to me because I was informed about him by someone who was smoking Camel cigarettes, and I think we were having a drink, and I was just thinking, I think I'm more concerned about what I'm doing down here versus what might be up there. But something else to consider, it's been a long time. Chicken Little, the acorn falls on her head, and she tells everybody the sky is falling, and they all gather together, and they all believe it because it's a rumor. But then what happens at the end? The fox comes along and he says, I'll keep you safe. Go in my cave. And once they're in the cave, he locks them in. And I think that's kind of where we're at. We have a lot of people crying wolf. And I think the reason is when I say they, the agencies behind a lot of these provocateurs are just taking names, not to make you paranoid, but I think all these limited hangout operations are just there so they can study who sees through stuff, who asks questions, and if they can isolate those individuals, they can give them ridiculous notions like Mandela effects to discredit them as witnesses. Here's a minor victory, and maybe we're getting somewhere. I've been having this trademark dispute with a certain individual for several years now, specifically with the platform YouTube, but Twitter also. refused to acknowledge any of my trademark claims over my podcast, Infinite Plane Society. They just wouldn't take it because my stalker troll had purchased timosmond.com, used an email address, and impersonated me. Anyway, I have a record here going back several years of asking them to investigate it, and every single time they would say, "We have determined it's not in violation." They did this again and again. Anyway, I have a record of it going back to 2018, and this morning they actually pulled the channel that's in violation. Not sure what changed, but I think it might be an indicator that my effort is paying off. And for those who don't know the full story, I have a petition for this. YouTube has inadvertently given my copyrights to someone who claimed that they were me. And as of right now, and I'm trying to get their attention because I have all the evidence here. It's all been a matter of public record. So far, we have 229 signatures. So I want to say thanks to everyone who signed it. Numbers matter in situations like this, and they're not going to take any action unless they feel like there's a big enough crowd gathered around with pitchforks and torches. So if you have pitchforks and torches and you want to gang up around YouTube, just click that link and sign. Also, some good news. We are back on Amazon Music. We are also on Audible, iHeartRadio, and iTunes. Marketing efforts are paying off here. If you search Infinite Plane, you don't have to put radio, you don't have to put podcast or anything else. If you just search Infinite Plane, you will find Infinite Plane Radio on radio.net. You'll find the tune-in. We're becoming very findable, which is very important. We don't want to get buried. All right, this has been great. This is Infinite Plane Saturday. We have always so much to talk about. We've been going through a lot of things in the Discord server. One of the main topics as of late has been JFK. And for all the finger pointing and the whodunit, no one is asking, did it even happen? Except those of us who have stepped off of the world stage and all of its, and really have just rejected the unsubstantiated claims. I don't say everything's fake. That's a gross mischaracterization. There's a real fine-tuned argument for falsifying the news, scientific reasoning. Lately, I've been recommending the work of Jim Fetzer and his How to Spot a False Flag, Part 1, 2, 3, and 4 for this reason. Now, most of you know here that I don't use the term false flag, but his methodology is what's important here because you can compare real and fake and come to an understanding of how you can discern the difference. And that's one of the things we do here. Javo says, any more IPS hoodies available soon? If you go to infiniteplanesociety.shop, it goes right over to my Amazon.com merch account. And we do have a number of hoodies. We have the IPS Think Tank hoodie, pullover. We have the I Want to Believe with the fake ISS. And many, many more. IPS.monster is the main site, but infiniteplanesociety.shop will take you right over to all of our Amazon listings. The logo designed by X-Pac of the penguin with the lightning wings is on totes, shirts, and I think even those little round things you put on the back of your portals, as Mark Zuckerberg calls them. Have you heard that Mark Zuckerberg actually calls your phone, the iPhone, a portal? All right, we have about 70 people here in chat, another 24 over there at the audio stream, and another 10 or 15 at Odyssey. Appreciate everyone joining in. If you want to leave any voicemails, please do. I just wanted to do a quick catch up tonight. We're going to be live tomorrow and pretty much every single day. I don't want to take up everyone's night. I know it's a holiday and all that, but the world stage doesn't stop. But if anything changes, if there's anything big, unexpected, disastrous, or worth reporting on, and it's urgent, you'll get the text alerts, the penguin signal. And if you don't get that, just go to ips.monster and click SMS. Thanks for joining. This is 33rd Degree, Lucifer Tim.
This is the court of the 33rd degree. I was taken aback a little suddenly as I looked askance at this door in front of me. Yes, there was a plaque clearly stating it to be the Supreme Court of the 33rd degree. 33rd degree. 33rd degree. I sat my days upon a hill. I sat and gazed across until I saw the most amazing thing. The sun and moon are closing in and all the people carried on down below. Just because they don't know just what's really happening. The sun and moon are closing in.
I'm so confused, I think I got a real bad coop. I need to get out of the house instead of doing what you tell me to. I caught the COVID cooties, now my life is like a movie. I'm not staying home. I feel me smoke screen.
When they were at their height. It's some brilliant people. I used to tune those in, and you'd have 6 or 7 people on the screen, and some of them are really, they're, mathematicians and people who, a lot of self-educated people, and I learned so much from those discussions. It really opened my mind. One group in particular around Lori Frary and her Flat Earth Conspiracy group. Very sharp people. They were networking and everything else, and it's pretty clear why they had to shut it down. They just couldn't tolerate that kind of, questioning of
Right. They didn't
basic
like the
cosmology.
serious minds, even to debunk it. They don't want serious minds devoting their attention to debunking it because that's the path to, wait a minute, what am I actually trying to debunk? Instead, they want to
Heresy.
make it look like it's unserious, it's a bunch of clowns, and anybody who asks these questions is somehow deficient in some way. And that smear campaign has been it's been so effective that the last Flat Earth conference didn't call itself a Flat Earth conference. They called themselves, quote, true earthers.
Yeah, I noticed that. And uh, did Owen Benjamin also host that, or what? What did he participate in that as
You know,
well?
I think the next one, I think the one that he's going to be in Alex Stein as well. They're like the headliners, but it's all going to be through Zoom conference. It's going to be a Zoom conference thing anyway. But yeah, True
Well, which is
Earth.
better. Yeah, why do people physically need to be in one, fly out to one place to do these things? Who started all that were these
Right, spreading chemtrails everywhere. Just stay
yeah, who
home
was
and
it? Jordan Sather and David Wilcox and really creepy people, grifters. They used to run these conferences and basically use it to collect a lot of money and sell their crap. And the coffee enema people. I shouldn't ridicule that. And there might be something to it. I shouldn't prejudge that.
no,
But
actually, I never heard about that until weirdly enough, there was a conversation between Crow 77777 and Owen Benjamin, and they were talking about that. And I was
yes.
thinking maybe that's what's causing the lunar wave. Crow 777's got so much caffeine in his system that his camera hand is
Oh
shaky.
it's funny you mention that because I learned about all this by way of Unirock. he was really trying to discredit all these people, and it was easy to do because some of them really, Jordan Sather in particular is a real scum. He's a low life. Uh, they would get a certain, I don't know, a certain class of people out there. In many cases, sort of older middle-aged women who, for some reason, would cluster around these, around these individuals and give them their money and everything. And the other group was, of course, Alfred Weber and Michael Salla and the exopolitics people. They're like the UFO crap. Well, all this ufology crap and the secret space program. That's what they call it, the secret space program. Yeah, right. Well, the answer to that, as you pointed out, is Mirage Men. That's clearly that's the trust, right? that's sort of a false controlled opposition being run in the field of alternative cosmology to try to divert it, take it off, guardrail it, gatekeep it.
Yeah, for people who
That's
don't
all
know,
that is.
Mirage Man's
And
a
also
documentary.
grifters, yeah, and also grift off of it because they're always out for money. Jordan
Yes,
Sather in particular is a money grubbing,
the Mirage Men would be the agents that are there to control the loose leaked information by steering it into conspiracies they can control. And these Mirage Men generally function as more or less grifters. They're somehow getting revenue off of it, and they're milking the crowd for the information they're peddling, which is usually connected to intelligence services. And the Mirageman documentary was actually about a local event, the Kirtland Air Force Base. Apparently, a conspiracy theorist was blogging about what he was seeing from the base. So the base sent special agents into his life to make friends with him and pretend to be conspiracy theorists, and they fed him all kinds of stories about abductions and aliens from Venus coming here to take our water, among other things. But yeah, the alien abduction stories came from the Air Force here locally. They admit this.
Did I ever tell you about someone I knew who worked at Area 51? I
No.
used to hang out with at the coffee shop that I was telling you about down in Baltimore, and he had been in the Air Force, and he had worked at Groom Lake facility, Area 51 as it's called colloquially. And I said, "Well, what did you see?" He said, "I never." He said I was just there loading and unloading trucks, and I got leukemia. About a year later, I got leukemia, and he was collecting disability from the VA. Apparently, they acknowledged that what the material he'd been handling, I don't know whether it was like nuclear material, which can be very toxic. I understand some of it, and that's how he caught leukemia. But one way or another, he was on permanent disability for like the rest of his life because they said that he'd gotten the leukemia from loading and unloading these secret um, whatever you want to call it, out of pallets of material out of out at Area 51 at Groom Lake, and that was all he knew about it. That's really all he knew about it. He said, "I never really saw anything unusual out there." He said, "I know they were testing stuff, but I never saw anything." But that's the closest I've come to actually meeting somebody. And that's the only time I've ever known somebody who worked out at Groom Lake in Area 51, and I thought that was kind of interesting, though. He wasn't the least bit curious about it, really.
Well,
Having
okay,
been in the
Area
military.
51, of course, Roswell and all this stuff is very interesting. The Roswell crash was in Corona Field, 1947. But 1946 was the year of the Jack Parsons, Marjorie Cameron, L. Ron Hubbard, Babylon working. And that was the year that was actually the first UFO sighting having been reported, and it was Marjorie Cameron. The woman hanging out with Hubbard and Parsons, the priestess in the ritual, is actually the first UFO witness, and that was a year before Roswell.
It's all witchcraft to me. They do spells on people and keep people preoccupied with it.
Oh yeah, it's fascinating too when you consider that you have Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard, uh, basically progenitor of modern rocket science or major godfather rocket fuel, slow burning rocket fuel, with the godfather of science fiction space religion, Scientology, the creator of it. I mean, that is really, to me, the fusion that created our modern worldview. Science fiction, movie magic, and mystery Babylon, which
Uh,
is what,
Disney played Disney played a pivotal role in that, of course, the whole Disney
yes, we live in a
empire.
Disney universe, and we still do. I mean, we do. We live in a Disney universe. So, it's a cartoon when you go above the Carmen line, from what I've seen.
Yeah. Well, I've run around the corral on this, so I probably should
Yeah, actually,
bid
hey,
you goodbye at
it's
this
been
point.
great catching up with you, Lynn. Everybody loves your calls. Good to hear from you again. And everyone who missed out,
How's the
yeah,
Yeah, continue to give us updates on the pursuit of your legal case against this slime. Well,
I'll drop a
we want
couple
to know more
updates.
about that
I'll
because
give a couple updates here because I just put out a press release on the topic. All right, well, hey, great for great call. Thanks for calling, and we'll catch up again.
take care.
Awesome. All right, let's see here. Yeah, a couple of updates on the suits. Okay, well, for those who don't know, the main thing against me has been cyber squatting, and there are 35 or 40 domains that were stolen in order to direct traffic away from Infinite Plane Society, Infinite Plane Radio. Admittedly, these bad faith domain registrations to steal traffic, it's a form of piracy. It's a major, it's a property crime. It's called cyber squatting. The Anti-Cyber Squatting Protection Act explains why this violates certain fair trade practices. It's very destructive. Anyway, the person who has been buying these domains to suppress this channel also falsely claimed to be me, claimed that my voice was his to YouTube's legal department in 2018. So, since 2018, anytime this guy puts a copyright strike against my content, they take it down because he's me from their perspective. Well, I got a copy of the email he sent to YouTube's legal. I showed this to the FCC. I reported YouTube and this person to the FBI IC3 cybercrimes, and I was told by someone at the FCC that we're looking at felony identity theft. And it's not just the private individual, but YouTube is complicit. I'm not sure if they colluded knowingly, but they've been involved in this. So one of the reasons why we've had 150 plus YouTube channels is that according to YouTube and according to Spotify, I think now, because the reason why Spotify pulled our podcast off is they said somebody claims that they own the podcast. Well, who do you think that person is? Now, as far as where it's going, it's getting to be interesting. We'll see where it goes. But my next move is next month I'm filing suit against YouTube for identity theft. And I'm basically suing YouTube and this person together in order to hopefully put a spotlight on this and get some kind of grand jury indictment against this individual. And I think YouTube's legal will help me in this regard. I've been working on this for some time. It's been difficult, mainly because this person is hard to serve papers because he works for, well, he's known to the White House travel agency. He's with George News. But YouTube's a part of it. That's my point. YouTube is complicit, and I have evidence. And I put out a press release basically saying I reported YouTube to the FBI, and I have the email headers to prove it. There is no doubt everything I'm saying is 100% true, and they owe this channel big. And the reason why they owe this channel big, in my view, is because were it not for the active suppression, it would be completely different right now. But I think we can make up for lost time. Now, the other lawsuit was one I instigated. It was a cyber stalker, and this person had doxed hundreds of people who were just talking about alternative cosmology. Anyhow, I doxed this person and I sued this person for defamation because the person was emailing employers to get me fired, emailing advertisers to pull funding when I was with the Dark Matter Network, and eventually resulted in my termination there temporarily. My point is, I sued him and he pulled everything about me from his site down. Therefore, I was thinking, okay, he's backing off. And I backed off. I didn't bother driving out to Ohio to deal with it. It's just a civil case anyway. Well, his ego was bruised, so he filed a retaliation suit, which to me is malicious prosecution, and the fact that it's unwinnable, in my view. And by the way, the case is closed. Whatever came of it, we'll see. Probably nothing. He sued me for $642,000. Again, I sue him for defamation and cyber stalking. He sues me for $642,000, claiming that when I vandalized one of his memes, or I remixed a meme of his, I put my mascot with the beak on a piece of clip art that's on his website. He said it was trademark libel, trademark infringement, and I was sued for $600,000. His attorney costs that he spent fighting this channel, $30,000, and then hurt feelings, $12,000. $12,000. So I guess he only cried 12,000 tears, not the 1 trillion tears from the Sandy hookers. Well, there you go, 642,000. Now, where is this case going? I don't know. I didn't go because, well, the judge didn't let me add Marcus Goldfinch, my cyber squatter, as a co-defendant at the last minute, which I tried to do because all of those stolen domains were being directed towards this person's defamation site. I mean, it's kind of interesting how all my trolls kind of work together. And YouTube, of course, being a soon to be a co-defendant, just adds to this. But anyway, just a few minor updates. There will be more in the near future. But the fact is, this channel has been accustomed to being not really censored so much as, I mean, because when we're talking about censorship, that's the government. We're talking about more or less terms of service enforcement. But in my case, it's not even terms of service violations. We're talking about malicious actors exploiting the system. And YouTube makes it easy. Every one of these platforms, they make it easy to censor somebody. You know, I mentioned this earlier, I should mention it again. Lloyd Miller had his Discord server pulled, which is crap. I mean, that's like burning a book. If you can cheer the censorship of a channel, you are a book burner. The person who had my channels pulled would look, if you're going to take my podcast off of all these people's podcast players, you're doing the same thing as I'm going to take it upon myself to go into their homes and pull these books off their shelves. I don't want to read it. I don't want anybody else to read it. Whatever happened to, I may not agree with what you have to say, but I'll defend your right to say it, which is Voltaire, which is very relevant to what we're doing here. We're talking about a writer who had to work around censorship by disguising his work as fiction. I mean, we're reliving quite a lot here. I think right now we're pretty much up against an age of endarkenment. I think they are definitely using media to put blinders on people. I mean, it's fascinating to watch this descent into a dark age where everyone is convinced they know more than they've ever known. And this visual dumbing down has been achieved by going from organic effects and real actors to bad CGI on purpose. Decades of bad CGI makes it difficult for you to tell the fake news from the real stuff. Diana South says they try to wear you down, but it makes you stronger. Yeah, well, we've evolved. The think tank is the main thing they try to censor. It's not me. It's the real-time interaction with dozens of people, human intel. It's the callers, it's the chatters, it's the interaction that they hate. Like if you think about it, traditional radio has always been very gate kept. You have the host and you have the listeners. The listeners don't know each other. They're scattered around. The host is in a one-to-one relationship with the listeners. That's kind of like in a university or a school setting. The teacher talking to the students. Yeah, there's a big group, but it's all one-to-one. No passing notes. That's cheating. Now what we've done here is it's the same kind of platform. We're broadcasting, it's one person, but what we've done with the chat is now we're all in the same classroom, we're all passing notes, and I can read the notes that are being passed. This is different from the gate kept. There's no gates, there's no fencing between the listeners themselves. And that's what is different about our think tank. That level of interaction. And the results speak for themselves. And we've been on this for several years, and the things we've been doing have been, I think, evolving a more refined approach to examining what media is and analyzing our hyper-mediated environment, the immersive illusion that we all exist in, and then we're also examining what does it mean to exist in an immersive illusion and to be aware of it, but to be surrounded by people who aren't. I've likened this to being an atheist in a fundamentalist society, or an atheist to that God. There's a difference in worldview, and that's what we're looking at here. It's worldview warfare. Infinite Muse says cheering censorship is insanity. Yeah, look, I'm not anti-vaxxer. I'm not pro-vaxxer. I'm not anti-pro-vaxxer. I'm not pro. I'm just like, think and let think. And in my view, this censorship is the same thing as saying we don't trust you with the wrong answers. You just have to listen to our right answers. That's a form of ignorance. We want you to be ignorant about the wrong. We don't want you to know the difference between right and wrong. I mean, to me, this is like suggesting that the real answers, that the red pills, are like the forbidden fruit, and they want you to remain perpetually in a state of ignorance. And I think that's kind of what I mean when I say we're moving into a dark age, because the more ideas they put out beyond the fringe, beyond the edge of acceptable discourse, the more the darkness dominates the universe of ideas, and they're reducing and shrinking the universe of acceptable ideas. My objective here is to take the censored stuff, specifically the anti this stuff, the stuff I don't even agree with, and I will put it into print. Infinite Plane Press is part of one of our future things here. We have Infinite Plane Radio, which is the voice of Infinite Plane Society, but we need to go into print. And it's not just that I want to put it in print, as in paper, magazine, newspaper, books, but I want the books to contain QR codes to links to audio versions to hear the stuff and to download. That way you can replicate. So every book is now a center of meme pestilence from the perspective of the censors. Every book can be used to replicate and re-upload. I mean, there's a reciprocal relationship between the books and the web. These things will be interactive. Just like going on a magazine's website and you click the links, well, your book will be interactive. Or newspaper or tabloid. But again, we're getting behind print 2.0. All right, going through some comments. Now, as far as wearing us down, I've described this thing as a hydra with 20 heads and 80 neck stumps, but we have been improving. And I think right now, after this last attack where they pulled the plug on 25 different podcast platforms, I think that was the last vulnerability that needed to be exposed. But now moving forward, ground zero, this is it. Go to ips.monster, get on the newsletter, get the text alerts, and you will stay in the know. And we're just going to build up from here. I don't see us going back down in numbers. And the reason why we want the numbers is that we want to have as many eyes watching as possible whenever some event happens. We have more than 160 press pass carrying reporters right now, and very soon we're going to be activating them like we did in 2020 during the pandemic. By the way, if you don't have a press pass, go to infiniteplane.media. Like I said, I'm sending out a shipment of press passes tomorrow. Another recent development, because one of the reasons why it's a big deal they killed the podcasting thing is they demonetized it. So now I know for a fact that's not the future for this channel for revenue generation. But I think print is it. I'm going through all of my old books, ebooks, pamphlets, and I'm editing, I'm republishing here very soon. I'm going to make up for lost ground, that's for sure. All right, let's see. This is going to be a interesting week ahead. Donald Trump's going to be announcing his second term. I don't know